Wednesday, April 20th, Lesson 4, The Covenant, Part 1. Now it was the moment when the promised covenant was to be fulfilled. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. Genesis 6:18. In contrast to the divine threat to destroy, Genesis 6:17, this covenant was the promise of life. Genesis 8:20 says, Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. What did Noah do first when he went out of the ark, and why? Like Adam and Eve, who surely worshipped God on Sabbath immediately after the 6 days of creation, Noah worshipped God immediately after the flood, another creation event in and of itself. There is a difference, however, between the two acts of worship. Unlike Adam and Eve, who worshipped the Lord directly, Noah had to resort to a sacrifice. This is the first mention in the Scriptures of an altar. The sacrifice is a burnt offering, olah, the oldest and most frequent sacrifice. For Noah, this sacrifice was a thanksgiving offering, compared with Numbers 15, 1-11, given in order to express his gratefulness to the Creator who had saved him. Read Genesis 9, 2-4. How did the flood affect the human diet? What is the principle behind God's restrictions? Because of the effect of the flood, plant food was no longer available as used to be. Therefore, God allowed humans to eat animal flesh. This change of diet generated a change in the relationship between humans and animals, in contrast to what had been between them in the original creation. In the creation account, humans and animals shared the same plant diet and did not threaten each other. In the post-flood world, the killing of animals for food entailed a relationship of fear and dread. Genesis 9:2. Once they started eating each other, humans and animals, no doubt, developed a relationship quite different from what they had enjoyed in Eden. God's tolerance, however, had two restrictions. First, not all the animals were proper food for food. The first restriction was implicit in the distinction between clean and unclean animals, which was a part of the creation order. See Genesis 8:19-20, compared with Genesis 1:21-24. The second restriction was explicit and new. It was to abstain from the consumption of blood, for life is in the blood. Genesis 9:4. From the book Patriarchs and Prophets, page 363, it says, Adam and Eve, at their creation, had a knowledge of the law of God. They were acquainted with its claims upon them. Its precepts were written upon their hearts. When men fell by transgression, the law was not changed, but a remedial system was established to bring him back to obedience. The promise of a Savior was given, and sacrificial offerings pointing forward to the death of Christ as the great sin offering were established. Adam taught his descendants the law of God, and it was handed down from father to son through successive generations. But, notwithstanding the gracious provision for man's redemption, there were few who accepted it and rendered obedience. By transgression, the world became so vile that it was necessary to cleanse it by the flood from its corruption. The law was preserved by Noah and his family, and Noah taught his descendants the 10 Commandments. Patriarchs and Prophets 3:6-3.